Today, I want you to think carefully about mindfulness. So, in order for me to do that, I'm going to take us on a little journey of mindlessness. So, I'm calling this video Hosting a Retreat on Mindlessness. And when you hear it in those terms, it sounds ludicrous. In the same way as it might sound ludicrous to host a retreat on presence, to host a retreat on mindfulness. It seems to me that if I can teach someone how to be mindful and present, then I can teach you how to be absent-minded, mindless, and vacant. And do we have the choice to go back and forth? Stick around. It seems laughable to imagine a gathering where people are taught how to be absent. How to be mindless. And how to live on accident. Yet, if you scour the internet, you'll find any number of places you can go to learn how to be mindful, how to be present, and how to find your purpose, to live on purpose, which implies that people are living on accident. They are gone in the head, taken up into mind activity, and that they are absent. And if you have the power to choose purposefulness, not to be inadvertent, not to live presently, not to be yourself. If you truly had that power, then you would be able to turn it on like a switch and become accidental. This is funny because I'm not sure where the switch is. Where one learns how to pay attention. And once you learn how to pay attention, how do you stop paying attention? How do you unlearn presence? And learn its negative. The argument would be, well, we're just naturally absent-minded and we have to learn how to be mindful. And most people are lost in their heads. They're sleeping. They're unconsciously moving around the world. They're asleep. How do you put yourself to sleep then? If you feel that you are awake. The Buddha said, I am awake. I wish I could have asked the Buddha, well, how do you put yourself to sleep? If you think about it, you don't put yourself to sleep. You just get tired and you go to sleep. How do you wake yourself up? You set an alarm. So if you want to be spiritually awakened, you just set an alarm. You tell Siri to set an alarm for Tuesday at 12:30 for you to be awake. See, this is lunacy. How we learn anything. Once you see it, how do you unsee it? Once you develop a skill, how do you lose your skill? It's really hard to unlearn it once it's learned. It's funny. I'm going through some of my aviation logbooks from years and years ago. I started flying in 2001, and there was a break of about 10 years where I didn't fly at all. Didn't fly. And just about 8 months ago, I started flying again, went up with an instructor, and knew exactly what to do. It's like I didn't even have a break. I couldn't unlearn my skill. I may have been a little rusty on some things, which is what's called atrophy. But once it's there, it's there. How do I become ignorant? And this is where life gets really interesting, because then you start investigating the intervals, the negative space, or what is typically called absence. And that consciousness itself seems to be expanding. And how do we make it expand? How do we choose to do that? How do we notice that maybe our bandwidth is narrow? I don't know. Because once you are awake, it's hard not to see it anymore. It's hard not to detect that consciousness is deepening, that there is a thing called presence. But it's not like I am trying to be present any more than I am trying to be affected by gravity. Gravity doesn't have a switch. And it's one of those things that's always working even when you don't think about it. So it could be that presence and absence, as we've been thinking about them, are mere concepts. To say, I am awake, is a conceptual awakening. And so spirituality becomes the physical world bumped up a level. Because the physical world, there are people sleeping and people awake. Sleeping in your bed and then awake in the morning. So what is this spiritual unconsciousness? And how do I teach you to become spiritually unconscious? How do I teach you how to become immature? How do I teach you to unsee what you know? To unlearn what you've learned? To turn back the clock of evolution? That's just as mysterious as the notion that you can speed up the process of evolution, that you can seek evolution, that you can make this flowering of consciousness happen any more than you can make a tree blossom or a bird fly. Nope. This is a happening, I suppose, and I'm not sure there is anything such as an unhappening or a rehappening or a regression or a progression. See, here's the thing. If you chase this, you get into a bunny hole. And perhaps, maybe, there is no difference between the so-called conscious individual and the unconscious individual. I don't know what makes people absent-minded. Or not on purpose. Or inadvertent. Because that's the very interruptions of presence that give life an interest. The contrast, the seeming going back and forth. You see, we think we're trying to get to the main event. And the main event is to awaken. But if that's the main event, that means that there's a culmination, a final product in the universe. The universe has peaked. And now it's all downhill from now. Is there a culminating experience called presence? Is there an ultimate? See, this always comes down to the question, who's the boss? Where's the finish line? Have we drawn the final chapter of humanity and called it quits? No. I'm still here. But strangely, to know that I am here, I have to know at some level that I am not here. So that to practice presence would mean that there is something oscillating between presence and so-called the lack of it. So presence and absence seem to be inverses of each other. And I don't know how to travel back and forth at will, because I still can't find the control mechanism. I can't find the ultimatum. I'm not sure who the boss is. And I'm not sure I can teach anybody how to be present and accounted for when you are present and accounted for, whether or not you're absent-minded or mindful, whether or not you're doing something on purpose or you are doing something on accident. The differences are what's hard to tell. Because when you chase this, you can't quite pinpoint it. In the same way that you can't quite pinpoint the difference between the present moment and the future. When does the present moment become the future? And when did we pass the hash mark for the present moment from the past? I'm not sure. And I'm not sure there's a difference between presence and absence anymore. Nor is there a progression or a regression. But even in pointing to the negative space, the interval, the margins, I'm still pointing to myself, that which makes it all possible. And there we go with that word point again. Culmination, peak, finality, drawing a conclusion. It all fades away. And presence returns. Forgetfulness comes back, ignorance comes back. And the oscillation between the two wobbles back and forth. So, want to attend a mindfulness retreat? You ought to attend a mindless retreat. You might as well get into the negative space and what we're calling absence, darkness, ignorance, unconsciousness, sleeping. What's that? Well, the church has called that sin. Separation, darkness. But I think it's more aligned with the mathematical term seen, which means curve. And a human perspective just can't see around the curve. And that's what linear is. Can't see the spherical nature. We think we're going to fall off. You're going to be disconnected from gravity. The only way to disconnect yourself from gravity is to not think about it. But even when you're not thinking about it, gravity's working. And even when you're absent, you're present. Now that's a strange thing. To think that I can do something absent-mindedly. And it's even more ludicrous to think that I can teach you how to do that, to be inadvertent, accidental, not able to keep your finger on the control unit. So, would you ever go to a retreat on absence? A workshop on mindlessness? Or some kind of religious organization that teaches you how to improve? Then you better ought to go. You ought to go to a workshop on how to get worse. Go to a workshop on how to not develop a skill. To take a skill that you have and make it worse. To take knowledge that you have and make it less. And take the presence that you have and diminish it. Seems weird. But it's in that delving of the interval and the negative space, the darkness, the gaps, the margins, that you transcend logic altogether. So come to my absence retreat. Come to my mindlessness retreat. Come to my workshop on how to make your skills worse. And you'll see just how ridiculous it is. And mind-boggling. My name is Ryan. I hope that you enjoyed this little mind excursion. I like to think very deeply about life, and I hope you do too. Please check out my blog. It's called mymorningmotivator.com, or one of my books on Amazon. And thank you for watching.